how hard should you train? If anyone's ever sat in a room with Hattie Boydell, she'll tell you, be the hardest worker in the room. Anyone heard that before? Yeah. It took me many, many years to convince her that actually recovery is a huge part of being a hard worker. Okay, and actually, one of the most detrimental strategies that people have with their training is coming into the gym and training as hard as they physically can every single week, going to failure every single set, especially on week 1 of a program. I'm going to give you a strategy for this, but in my opinion, that's not the best strategy, and it's also the reason why most people reach a plateau very early in their training career. I'll briefly explain that. If you fail on week 1, where do you go on week 2? Yeah, maybe reduce the load so you can get the right reps that you prescribed, or try and do the same weight but not fail. Neither of those are very enjoyable. When I train, what I like to do is improve every single time I come into the gym. And the best way of objectively telling you that you've improved is the weight on the barbell. Do we agree? Okay, this is why I love strength training. It objectively teaches us that we have gotten better. Hardcore way of saying that, the iron doesn't lie. Yeah? Okay? Compared to, when I first started Arnold Schwarzenegger style, I first started because I wanted to look better, build muscle. I didn't know any other reason why you'd train weights. Okay? And after a few years, I got sick and fucking tired of looking at myself in the mirror to see if my abs were more chiseled and pinching the fat around my belly, which you cannot fucking tell day to day, week to week. Okay, so I got sick and tired of training that way. No offense if that's the way that you like to train, but that's what turned me to strength training. Okay, when I was taught how to progressively overload, how to measure your progression with weight on the barbell, this was enjoyable for me, which is why I try and teach people to enjoy your training. Training morale is one of the highest priorities when it comes to your long-term success. I'm going to give you guys the magic formula to success at the end of this presentation. Okay, but how hard do we train? Now, there's a few measurements on how to measure how hard we train. Percentages. Okay, so that's the literal definition of training intensity. Okay, so it's not how hard you're working. Like I can run a fucking marathon. I can't. I'm just using an example. I can't. And that would be really intense for me. But by definition, that's a very low intensity. Okay, what is a high intensity is as we get closer and closer to your 100% of your 1 rep max. 100% is the highest intensity possible. Marathon isn't 100%. It's fucking, 20%. I wouldn't know. Okay, but lots and lots and lots of time. Low intensity. Does that make sense? However, if I'm having a conversation with someone and they say, this was intense, I'm not going to say, haha, you're wrong, because I did this science chat. and that's not what it means. No, I'm going to say, let's talk about what does that mean. And in fact, that's what this is what I like about, the most respectable scientists that I like to listen to. They'll clarify in the beginning of the conversation. Okay, first, let's talk about what do we mean when we say intensity. They don't sit there and belittle the person they're having a conversation with and say, you idiot, that's not what intensity means. Okay, but technically, higher percentage of your max is a higher intensity. Okay, so measuring intensity by percentage is a great way. A couple of other ways, RPE and RIR. Have we heard of those terms before? I know I said don't fucking acronym me, so I don't want to fucking acronym you either. RPE stands for, these are all over the place, dear me, rating of perceived exertion. Okay, so don't look at that, that's wrong. This is my percentage chart. This is a tool that you guys get to use. Okay, but rating of perceived exertion, essentially a score out of 10. 10 being train to fail, 1 being you guys sitting here. And we typically will train somewhere in between them. Okay? Training at an RPE 10 every session is not the wisest way of training, and I will talk a lot about that. Training to failure is bad. Don't ever do that. Except when it's good. Then you should always do that. Does anyone recognize that? I also strategically posted that this week because I knew I'd refer to it. Okay, and this is the confusion that we have in our world. Okay, because you've got one side of the fence that says you must train to fail, and then the other side of the fence that says you must leave repetitions in reserve. Who's right? Neither and both. Okay, there's a training principle called variation that will always win. Okay, there's context to variation as well. don't go from max squats to fucking star jumps because we want to follow the principle of variation. It has to make sense as well.